Put your faith in the light.
Hello guys, welcome to another one of my videos. We have a ton to talk about. Blizzard dropped a huge blue post for the next patch 11.0.5 yesterday. This is basically a General Paladin rework. They are increasing our utility massively and giving us a ton of options. I already looked at these and some of them are very strong, although situational. And well, instead of me just looking at them from the blue post, and just reading stuff, I'm gonna go over the whole General Paladin tree and talk about the things that I would pick, and we're also going to describe the new things and all those fun, good stuff, So let's start with Lay on Hands. So we're always going to take Lay on Hands here. We're going to take always Cleanse Toxins, although sometimes if you know that the place doesn't have diseases or poison effects, you can ignore it. This is a new one, Imperial Ward, and this is one of the talents that I think is super busted. So Lay on Hands now grants the target 100% armor for 30 seconds and ignores healing reduction. So the second part, the healing reduction, doesn't really have an impact in PvE situations, but that's huge for PvP players, so there's no more mortal strike effects for 30 seconds on the target that you lay on hands. So that can be backbreaking for some comps, maybe you're against a warrior, you're against rogue, but basically I think a lot of classes now have like healing reduction. So yeah, this can be backbreaking against those classes because you can guarantee that for 30 seconds they don't do anything of that nature to you. The 100% armor is really powerful in PvE scenarios because you can just drop this on your tank pre-pull. You don't even have to heal him, you just want it for the 100% extra armor. That's 100% extra armor on a tank. He can just go in there, pull super big, and you can just do big AoE damage. That lasts 30 seconds, so this talent is pretty busted. I think this is gonna get nerfed by 50% in my opinion. I think 15 seconds is a good duration for this. 30 seconds is just too long. Next one. Fist of Justice. Hammer of Justice cooldown is reduced by 15 seconds. This is a nice quality of life change. It's no longer 2 points investment. You always want to have your stun as often as possible in both PvE and PvP situations, so really good change. Let's take a point there. And next up, in PvE situations, for the most part, you're always going to take Blinding Light. Sometimes in PvP you take Repentance, but for now, let's just put Blinding Light. Turn Evil, let's just take it so we can see the next talents, the new ones that they added. So for Cleanse Toxins, we have an extra effect now. Whenever you cleanse someone, you just heal them. Pretty simple, pretty nice. These small healing effects are pretty inconsequential in PvE scenarios, but in PvP situations they can actually save the people that you're playing with, So yeah, maybe in PvP this has a use. I don't think it's gonna be necessary in PvE situations, but let's ignore it for now. And let's take a point here in After Image or Healing Hands. This is a talent that was a lot down there in our talent, After Image. No one ever take it and no one will ever do because it's really bad. The Healing Hands one though is really powerful and it synergizes really well with Imperial Ward because it's going to reduce the cooldown of Lay on Hands. So you can put that Lay on Hands on your tank more often and give him 100% increased armor so he can pull the whole dungeon. Pretty powerful. Let's take a point there. Next up we have our horse. Always take horse. Horse is very loyal. Up next we have Light's Contenance. So cooldowns of Repentance and Blinding Light are reduced by 15%. So Repentance is very rarely taken in Mythic Plus situations, but we always take Blinding Light because that's our AoE stop. And having a shorter AoE stop means that we can pull bigger because we can stop like very dangerous cast and just do big AoE. So yeah, this talent might have some uses. We can put a point there for our Blinding Light. In PvP situations, it's also really good because you can like AoE blind the whole team to set up some kills and all those things. So good talent. Next up we have the options for Turn Evil. So here we have Range Evil. It makes it that the cast time is reduced by 100%. Pretty good, just insta-fear something like the Demon Hunter, not Demon Hunter, the Demonology Pet, or the Abomination from the Dead Knight or something like that. Or you can just use Stand Against Evil and just fear 5 things, it can help with those Sue classes. Although at the rate that Demonology Warlocks and Unholy Death Knights summon things, I don't think 5 targets is going to last, you're better off, I think, just fearing the big thing, the main demon or the Abomination. So maybe it has some uses in PvP scenarios. In PvE situations, very rarely it is going to do something unless the dungeon has a ton of undead mobs, but then again, you don't want them running around like crazy, feared. So yeah, kind of nice flavorful talent. After that, we have Holy Reprieve. Your forbearance duration is reduced by 10 seconds. This is a comeback from the Ashbringer. I think this was a trait back then in Legion. It's nice to see it here, you know. It can save you, especially in PvP situations where you want to use all your utility. Maybe you're under pressure, you use bubble, and having those extra 10 seconds less 10 seconds of forbearance might save yourself, because you can use a bop on top or a lay on hands, you know. So it's pretty useful in those situations. For PvE, this does nothing, you know. You're normally not under too much pressure to use your forbearance defensives. After that, we got Cavalier, 2 charges on Steed. This is going to be most of the time a must take because you want the mobility. And then we have a new talent. This is Divine Spurs. So Divine Steed cooldown is reduced by 20%, but the duration is reduced by 40%. You might say that's a big sacrifice, like, you know, why do you want to reduce your duration of horse for 40%? This is because it has synergy with the next talent, you know. This is Steed of Liberty. Remember the Wings of Liberty Blizzard never gave us, the Turelion jump? Well, we have now Horse of Liberty, which is pretty decent, you know, because now Horse gives you freedom automatically when you cast it on yourself. For 3 seconds. This is pretty good. That's what I was saying of Divine Spurs, because now it has synergy with that. You get more horses, that means you get more cleanses with freedom. So it's gonna be pretty useful in arenas, I think, because we get kited a lot, and it's very annoying to use horse and have to use your freedom on top to commit. With this, you can have your 2 charges of horse, you have the cooldown reduction of it, so you have in turn more mobility in PvP situations. In PvE, it might also be useful in dungeons where you get slowed a lot and you need the extra mobility, but if you don't really need it, you can always go with classic old Blessing of Freedom, you know. So both are pretty good here depending on the situation. After that, we're gonna take our kick, because you always take kick. Never go anywhere without your kick. It's the most important thing that you can do. It can save your life. Okay, next up we have Obdurancy. That good old talent, just 2% extra speed and 2% extra avoidance. Just a nice talent. In certain situations you want to take it, you know, if you know the dungeon is going to have a bunch of AoE effects, it's a pretty safe pick. Now they also revamped the icon for Divine Toll. You can see it's a lot more golden, it's less Kyrian looking. Still doing the same thing as our good old Divine Toll, so we're gonna take a point there. Unbound Freedom, so this is going to increase the movement speed of Blazing of Freedom. You get 30% extra, well, you're gonna get 30% extra movement speed when you use Blazing of Freedom. And the new effect is that automatically you're gonna freedom someone that's close to you whenever you freedom yourself. So this is just a nice smart cast on your freedom, you know. You don't no longer have to like target someone to freedom themselves, it's just gonna do it by itself. Pretty useful. It's probably gonna be also in combination with the Steed of Liberty. When you use horse, you get freedom, you can freedom someone else. It's pretty good, pretty useful utility. And next up we have Sanctified Blades. This is always going to be a must for all paladins. It's still 2 points. It's still gonna give you that 6% avoidance plus a ton of extra stamina. Next up we have Punishment. This is a talent that's more like a win more button. It gives you some extra damage, but it's not too much, you know. It's around like probably 0.2% extra damage at the end of a key if you're kicking successfully stuff, but that never happens, you know. Sometimes, unless you're in a coordinated group, you're never going to be sure that you kick, so most of the time you can ignore this. Let's move now to the next row. Divine Reach. The radius of your auras is increased by 20 yards. This is a talent that's also pretty inconsequential. Very rarely you're gonna be like 50 yards away from your group. In PvP situations, maybe this happens if you get feared too far away from your group, but then again, you probably are dead if that happens. So yeah, this talent doesn't do too much. Next up we have Blazing of Sacrifice, the good old ones, you know. Blazing of Sacrifice, you take that. We got Blazing of Protection, you always take that. Now we have the effects for Divine Toll. These are the basic old ones, but now they're like a lot higher than before. No longer capstone talent, so that's very nice because we can take more utility points now, you know, and always guarantee our damage points. So we're gonna take Divine Resonance. No one ever takes Quicken Democation. I don't think no one will ever do. It's not even comparable to having Judgment every 5 seconds for 15 seconds, because we have a lot of synergy with judgments with the main retribution talent. So yeah, just Divine Resonance there. Consecrated Round is no longer in the retribution tree, and now it's a utility in the general place, and I think it should always be here. It's a pretty good point if you need a slow, you know. A consistent slow with consecration is really good. 50% reduced slow every 10 seconds, because your consecration has the cooldown of your Blade of Justice. Well, almost, you know, it has an internal cooldown on it, but yeah, it's basically that. it's pretty good. You know, it also affects Divine Hammer if you're using that, although no one actually is using Divine Hammers. It's a very clunky spell to use. But yeah, for Consecration, if you need the consistent slow, Consecrated Ground's pretty good point in value. Next up, we have Holy Aegis. This is a nice change. Quality of life. This was 2 points before. It's now only 1 point for the 4% critical strike and armor. Pretty good. Now we have the benefits for Blessing of Sacrifice, you know, the good old ones, Sacrifice of the Just, reduce cooldown on Blessing of Sacrifice, or you can take Recompense and get like extra around 0.4% extra damage if you use Blessing of Sacrifice on cooldown in PvE situations in Mythic Plus. Either or is good, you know. 1 minute Blessing of Sacrifice is pretty useful to make your tank have like pretty decent pulls in Mythic Plus situations. After that, we have a node choice, you know, with between Divine Purpose and Sacred Strength, which is a new talent that makes it so your holy power spending abilities are just flat out 2% more effective. So now, this is you have to pick between consistency and just explosiveness. You know, Divine Purpose gives you situations where you can just throw Holy Power Spender after Holy Power Spender, while Sacred Strength gives you a more streamlined approach of your damage. Which one is going to be better? If you ask me, it's gonna depend on the simulations for the most part. I think both are pretty much the same value here. But yeah, it's probably gonna depend on playstyle and what sims better. For now, I'm just gonna go with my favorite, you know, Divine Purpose, and just leave it there. And then we have Improved Blessing of Freedom. This is still an old talent, just they moved it around a bit. Reduce cooldown of Blessing of Protection by 60 seconds. Next up, we have Unbreakable Spirit. You're always going to take a point in this because this is just going to reduce the cooldown of all your defensive spells, Divine Shield, Shield of Vengeance, and Divine Protection also lay on hand. So just take a point in this always. After that, we have Lightforge Blessing. This is an old talent. A Divine Storm heals you and 2 nearby allies by 3% of your maximum health. Can be a nice little off heal, but it got nerfed so much that I think it's not worth taking. Next up, we have Lead the Charge. This one is very interesting. This is pretty similar to the Dractyr Raid buff, you know, where they reduce the cooldown of everyone's movement speed ability. You basically do the same, but on a smaller level. You know, Divine Steed reduces the cooldown of 4 nearby allies' major movement speed by 3 seconds, which is can be pretty useful if you're using, let's say, something like Divine Spurs, you know, in combination with your 2 charges of Horse. You can make your team pretty mobile with this talent, and if you take it for your troubles, you just get an extra 3% movement speed flat. So it's pretty useful value point. Next up, we have Worthy Sacrifice and Righteous Protection as a node choice for improving your Blessing of Sacrifice. You can take Worthy Sacrifice and you automatically cast your sacrifice on an ally that drops below 35%. You can't be in a loss of control effect for this to happen, and the cooldown of Blessing of Sacrifice is activated at 100%. So basically it just puts it on cooldown. And this is pretty useful, I think, mostly in PvP situations. If you are distracted and you just don't press your Blessing of Sacrifice on someone, you can just automatically do it. You know, smart casting, Worthy Blessing of Sacrifice can save someone. In PvE situations, although this is pretty risky, because whatever was killing your ally and drop them low might be also killing you, and you just sacrifice them, so the damage can leave you low enough that any residual damage, if it was AoE, will kill you, so it's pretty risky to take. The other option here is just ignoring it or using Righteous Protection. Blessing of Sacrifice now removes and prevents all poison and disease effects, so this is pretty strong in PvP situations for some classes. You know, an Assassination Rogue wants to poison you, you drop Sacrifice on someone, he can't do it for the duration of the sacrifice. Pretty strong. You're playing against a Death Knight, they want to put diseases on you, you just sacrifice someone, they can't. This gives you a nice window of defense against those specific matches, you know, but it's not that you always pick this talent, you know, it's just a situational talent. Next up, we have Holy Ritual. Allies are healed by your 100% of your spell power when you cast a blessing spell on them, and healed again when the blessing ends. So it's just nice small heals whenever you are blessing someone. Can be Blessing of Freedom, Blessing of Protection, Blessing of Sacrifice. If you cast like drop 2 blessings on someone, they get double the healing, which is really nice, you know, just extra value on our blessing spells. I'm gonna take a point on this so we can see the next row down here. Okay, Blessed Calling. Allies affected by your blessings have 15% increased movement speed. This can be pretty huge if you combine it with things like, for example, Unbound Freedom. You get 30% from the Unbound Freedom and you get 15% from the Blessed Calling, you know. Although that might be like overkill and movement speed for PvE situations. In PvP, this might be really good because more mobility is always good. I'm just gonna leave it there for now because I want to use my other points down here. Inspired Guard, so Divine Protection, increased healing taken by 15% for its duration. This is really good in both PvE and PvP situations. For PvE, you want to see if the place that you're going needs that extra healing that your healer has to do on you, you know. So you pop this, and your healer has a nicer time pulling you up, you know, healing you up. In PvP situations, this is going to be a must, because if you're popping your Divine Protection, is because you're under pressure, and making sure your healer can top you off with this can be life-saving. So yeah, PvPers probably always gonna take it. PvEers, you might have to see what fights you're going to go in if you need it. Next up, we have Judgment of Light. This is a pretty trash talent that I don't know why it's still here. I don't think no one took it, because Judgment makes your next 5 successful attacks against the target heal by a very small amount. So yeah, it's not very useful. I don't think anyone's gonna take it against the other good options that we have here. Okay, let's go to the next row. So Seal of Might. You're always going to take 2 points in this because it gives you damage, you know. It gives you 4% mastery. That's our best stat now, and it's probably going to be like that until the end of the expansion. And also increases your strength by an extra 4%, so you always take it. Up next we have, oh yeah, let's talk about the talents that we're not taking at this row. Fate's Armor. So Word of Glory grants 20% bonus armor for 4.5 seconds. Pretty useful, you know, if you're in a match in PvP with physical damage dealers, although now even physical damage dealers do like magical damage, so it might be like worthless. But there's a world where you can combine Fate's Armor with Imperial Ward and send your tank with 120% bonus armor into a pull. Obviously you're sacrificing your damage because you have to like Word of Glory them, but it's a nice thought, you know. It can happen. Probably not gonna happen though. Next up is Stoicism. This is basically a PvP only talent, because the duration of stun effects on you is reduced by 20%. This used to be a trinket for all types of crowd controls, but now we have it as a passive for stuns on paladins. This is pretty busted. This is just like using an extra PvP trinket for if you're fighting rogues or people that use stuns. So it's really powerful. For PvEers, this is basically nothing, because very rarely you're gonna get stunned in PvE situations, and it's not going to kill you, you know, because if you got stunned, the effect was probably lethal at that point. So yeah, Stoicism for PvPers. Next up we have Seal of the Crusader. This is a new version of it. Your auto attacks heal a nearby ally by 10% of your attack bar. So this is worthless. Yeah, this is really bad compared to the old Seal of the Crusader. We're just gonna ignore it. Vengeful Wrath. This has 2 points now. This currently is bugged and doesn't show you like what's going to be increased, but I'm guessing it's going to be like Hammer of Wrath deals 25% increased damage on the first point, and the second point is going to be 50% increased damage on things with 35% less health. So for now that's free damage, so we're gonna take it. Next up we have Eye for an Eye. This is a very old talent that's coming back. Not in the same way it was before, but it's kind of like that. So melee and range attackers receive 35% of spell power, holy damage every time they strike you, while you have Divine Protection and Divine Shield. So this is a very niche talent. It punishes people that keep hitting you where you're immune, which shouldn't happen if they are smart. And in PvE situations, you can get a little extra damage, you know, if you bubble yourself and the boss is doing some AoE abilities and you do some extra damage to them, but I think it's just not going to see any play, you know. It's too niche, too gimmicky. Next up we have Selfless Healer. Flash of Light is 30% more effective on your allies, and 40% of the healing done also heals you. So if you want to off heal in PvP situations, you know, you might want to throw some flashes of lights on your allies. This can be useful because you're going to also get healed whenever you heal someone else. For PvE situations, I think it's better to depend just on Word of Glory. Flash of Light, you rarely press that button, you know. It's better just to waste some holy power and just top yourself off with that better, because it has more support, you know, has healing hands and all those things to heal you up from lower health. So we're gonna ignore it for now. Let's go to the capstones now. So the last capstone on this side is of Dusk and Dawn. So this is basically the old version of Dusk and Dawn that we already had, but they buffed the Blessing of Dawn damages. Now 30% up from 20%. This is because I saw that they removed a lot of the damaging talents from the general talent tree, so that they gave this an extra 10% damage, you know. Blessing of Dusk is basically the same, damage taken reduced by 4%, and your holy power abilities cool down faster, you know. So we're always gonna take a point on that. So next one is Light Barrier. 10% of all healing done to you from other sources heals up to 4 nearby allies divided evenly among them. So this is basically utility healing talent. And I think it's going to see some use in mostly PvP situations, because that's where like you're going to be receiving external healing a lot to survive fights. It can see some use in PvE scenarios to help your healer top off the group, because whatever healing they're doing on top of you is also going to heal everyone else. It's basically like you're a small beacon of healing or something like that. It sounds good, you know, but we have other options that we can take that I think are more impactful in PvE situations up here, you know. Probably gonna take like cooldown reduction on blinding light, maybe get more horses and all those things. I think might be more impactful than Lightbearer, but it's a nice point to see there. Next up, we have Light's Revocation. So removing harmful effects with Divine Shield heals you for 10% for each effect removed. This heal cannot exceed 30% of your maximum health. A Divine Shield may now be cast with Forbearance still active. So this just has PvP written all over it, because yeah, there's very rarely occasions where you're gonna have a bunch of debuffs on you in PvE situations. Where you want to remove them with this, you know, but in PvP situations you're getting dotted by everyone, and you're always going to get that extra 30% maximum health whenever you pop your bubble. That's going to help you recover a lot faster if you're not in line of sight of your healer or something like that. And having the ability to Divine Shield while Forbearance is still there is pretty big, you know. It's going to save you in certain situations there. So these two last talents, like capstones, are mostly for PvP situations, then not much for PvE. If I had to pick something for PvE, I would go with Lightbearer, you know. And let's put an extra point here on Inspired Guard to get extra healing, and let's see, one more point to just finish up the talent, probably the cooldown reduction and Sacrifice of the Just. So yeah, that would be what I take. Obviously this is not tested or anything, we just did it to show you guys the talent tree. And yeah, that's the whole tree, guys. Oh yeah, I forgot one more thing. Blizzard made some changes to Retribution specifically. You know, Shield of Righteous damage increased by 20%, and that's pretty worthless because no one in Retribution uses a shield to do damage. And Word of Glory healing increased by 10%. So the developer's note, it says that we're gonna move some power back to Word of Glory and Shield of the Righteous with the removal of Strength and Conviction, a talent that no one ever took. So the Word of Glory heal here is pretty impactful because we use that to recover a lot in both PvP and PvE scenarios. I'm really excited to use this new talent tree when the patch drops. It gives us something the old one was missing: options. Since they moved a lot of the damage points earlier on the tree and only 1 out of the 3 capstones are damaged, it allows us to be flexible and pick a specific utility for every situation, giving us the feeling of choice matters. And well guys, that's going to be the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching everyone.